Hello guys, this is Unders. Today we're going to do a review of the Greg Wells mix series. Let's check it out. Alright guys, here we are inside a Logic project of mine. This track is Lessons Learned from the album Lessons Learned. I'll link that in the description if you want to hear the whole track. And this is the mix section. As you can see, incredibly full of tracks. Okay, the reason I've chosen this is I've got some piano and keys going on, there's some strings, there's a bass line, there's vocals. It hits all the points of the Greg Wells mix series. Now I've grabbed this middle section here, which goes from a verse, second part of the verse, into a bit of the breakdown. I'm just going to have a listen through that, and we've currently just got the mix as I had it at this stage on this particular version. Okay, so you get an idea of how the song goes and what it's all about. Now, what I've done here is I've taken some key parts of the track, whether it's a mix bus or just a single channel, and I've also used the Centric on the output here, and we're just going to have a listen to what those are doing. But what I'm going to do first is just let you A and B all of the Greg Wells plugins and how I've set them up, enabled versus disabled. Now the reason I did that was I just wanted you to hear the profound difference that happens when I insert those 5 plugins, and the fact that I've gain matched them as much as possible, so within sort of half a decibel. Some of them appear to be a lot louder. In terms of peak range, they're matched, so it's possible they've boosted sort of the RMS and are undergoing quite a bit of compression. So they might be changing in that terms of level, but I've matched them as close as possible, and it gives quite a nice difference. It works well on these particular bits of audio. So let's have a look at them individually. Firstly, if we grab just the instrument section here, and we'll shrink this back down a bit. Now on here, I've got the piano. Now going into here is more than just the piano, but I felt this was giving the best overall effect rather than the tonecentric, for example. Now in isolation it makes the cello a little bit harsh on the top end, however when you put that into the mix it sits in there quite nicely. Just have a quick listen here, I'll leave it in and then we'll just take it in and out. Now the piano Centric has a couple of features that aren't so obvious, considering it's just effectively a 3-knob plugin. So a real key thing is that you can actually sort of shift and link these two things together here. So you see where we've got this going right on, say what would be C6, C7 up here. If we hold shift and select these two together, they actually link together, so if we were to dial it back, it would dial the delay back with it. And that's just a really useful automation feature. I thought I'd let you guys know. I haven't made use of it in here because there's lots of already delay and bits going on in the track. But how we've put it in here is nice for the most part. The doubler not helping on what I've used it here. We can have a listen to it. Yeah, it just introduces lots of phasing issues, especially with the cello. If you've perhaps got a live recording of a piano single mic'd or one mic's not great, the doubler might help you out, but otherwise I'm not seeing too much use in it in the sort of music that I'm doing. But overall this plugin is tightening up the top end, it's making it nice and bright, and it's doing a good job here. It sits quite nicely there, we like that. So we're moving on to the next one. We've got the drum section. If I remember rightly, all the drums are from Logic apart from like a cut up sampled break. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we've got some bits of a break cut up there and reintroduced in MIDI, and then everything else is the Logic drummers. What have we got? Brooklyn and Scientific Method apparently. But I ended up with this. Now that's okay, however, we've used tonecentric on here, and what we've pushed it around the 10:30, 11 o'clock sort of range here, and listen to what it does to that mid-range and toms. Yeah, it really gritties up the feel of them, and I really like that. I actually really liked it really pushed as well, but we lose a lot of the dynamic and punch, but it gives such a great booming tone. You can have a listen to that. That could definitely work nicely as an effect, or even if you pushed it with automation up across like an 8-bar section, it would just build up that tension and distortion. I'm not usually a fan of one knob plugins. I'm not massively sold on this. This was the only use I could really find for it. Applying it to vocals just wasn't having the effect I was after. In this track, it was the only thing I could find, but the art of mixing is 10,000 tiny adjustments to make one overall whole thing. And here is where I found a use for it on the drums, and you can hear what it's doing quite easily. On the next part is the vocal. Now, the vocal on this track, lots and lots and lots of work. As you can see, it's cut up lots, there's lots and lots of edits going on, and then it's bounced out to these single stem parts for different bits of the track. There's still a load of processing going on it as well, and then even on the bus, but we've introduced vociecentric on as well, just to see what it does, and I've pushed it almost all the way around. All the other effects are turned off in this case, just didn't need them for what I already had. So the vocal naked, if you will, without voice-centric is this.
Would you fight the chance to ignite your last defense? 'Cause I never meant for it to end this way.
Now let's have a listen to what voice-centric does. What I would get you to listen to is the sort of upper mids, and that is where it's tightening the most.
'Cause I never meant for it to end this way. 'Cause I never meant for it to end this way.
One thing to note, I did have to lower it by 3 decibels to get it sitting approximately where it was before. This really brought it up and out, which wasn't how it was originally, despite the point that this mix was at. So that's just something to note. The compression and sort of gain structure on it seems to push it up quite a bit, but the tonality it adds is quite nice. In terms of delay, the delay is good. It's synced straight into the tempo of the track. We can just flick that on and have a listen.
'Cause I never meant for it to end this way.
The doubler again, not useful for me.
Never meant for it to end this way.
She's just got a mono vocal. The doubler might be useful. In this case, I've already bounced this down to a stem, and it's got some other stereo effects going on, so the doubler's not helping us out there. And the reverb's nice, but honestly, I would probably always go for an aux, send it out to a reverb that I can set up individually for the track. But if you're just using these plugins, if these are like your first investment, you've got a decent vocal reverb in there straight away.
'Cause I never meant for it to end this way.
Yeah, and it sounds really nice, smothered and great. Not going to be great for your mix, I don't think, but it's a nice effect. If you've got a bridge and you just want to bring some reverb in, you can just automate that knob, and you've beautifully got a nice smothered, reverby sounding vocal. Let's hear it with loads of reverb on.
'Cause I never meant for it to end this way.
Oh, well, there you go. Catch 22. I actually quite like it with all that on. I just want to go back a step, and we're going to have instruments turned on, and we're going to have chords turned on. We're going to look at this breakdown type section here. Now, in here, I've got those staggered keys with lots of delay going on, where we've used tonecentric, which is U, and I've also got it enabled here for this particular one. And I've also got this one enabled here, which is chords, which is right at the bottom here. It's just named layer. So if we pop the section just here, and we just listen to the instrument section, where we've got these sort of staggered keys going on. I've decided to treat these chords here separately. They're like quite a low down Rhodes distorted chord. But pianocentric, again, I think I've got almost the same settings on. Yeah. It just adds that little touch of holding them in the right place. So we get rid of it. Now the sound you're going for here might apply perfectly, but it's a little bit live, it's a little bit wobbly. This just tightens it up just that little bit and it sits a little bit nicer in the mix. It's a tiny adjustment really, but it works well. So let's listen to all 4 sections where I've put the Centric plugins on, and this is what we have. In fact, if we take this section here, we'll get a bit of everything. And this is where I've introduced Centric as well. Now if we just have a listen to the first 4 here, and I'll enable it for the second. It's interesting what it's doing here. It is adjusting the balance of the track. I'm unsure if it's got something like a pink noise profile in it, but it definitely adjusts the low end and rounds that off, and it's definitely compressing quite a lot. Outside of that, I can't really tell you how much it's doing, but I've had to pull the gain down by 2 decibels to stop it jumping right up into a territory where I didn't really want it, and to keep it around the same level. So it is gain boosting even though we're not even close to halfway round here. Let's listen to the whole track now. We'll A and B it. Now, even this far up for me, it's doing too much, so I'm going to dial it back just a touch more. Now, the way it's capturing the low end and really rounding that off, it brings everything up to a nicer balance. That is useful, but personally, I wouldn't use this plugin on my mix bus to do this process. I would perhaps listen to it, make that decision that it is doing the right thing and it is improving it, and go backwards in the mix, adjust that low end, perhaps even look at my bass bus and go about compressing that and solidifying that, rather than using this on the mix bus. I'd rather get the mix right without having that level of processing and lack of control going on, because it's very likely going to affect the bridge section, which changes in dynamic dramatically, a lot more significantly. Let's just have a quick listen to that. We'll let it run through those 4 bars and then play into the bridge. I get the feeling we'd have to automate it and toy around with it to get it to match correctly.
footsteps are the soundtrack to my heart song. Follow me, yeah, follow
Yeah, I'm going to agree with myself that if I was to use this, I'd have to automate it a lot, and there'd be lots of adjustments going on with the dynamic of the track. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think I'd use it more of as a tool to get an idea of what I can do to improve this track, and then maybe use it right near the end as like a final polish, but very subtly. It might be useful on buses and things as well. We're not going to try that today. I think we've gone over enough. But overall, I think the bundle is useful in the circumstance where you've got a great piano sound, you've got a really good vocal sound. The tonecentric's useful for subtle adjustments and things. I'd rather probably use something like Saturn and just have the option to obliterate the sound if I want, or be really subtle. It's useful if you've already got good sounds and you want to just add a little bit of something to them. So like the A and B with the whole track, that really shows it off nicely. These small adjustments coming to a bigger thing. I mean, if we do just these four and leave the Centric off, so we've got all four off now and Centric off, and we're just going to introduce these four back in. The difference it makes is pleasant, and it's not massively boosting the sound. In fact, let's refresh all of these and we'll see where we sit. See, now the gain structure adjusted by almost a decibel, not quite 1 dB, but there's a lot more change happening than that 1 decibel in terms of the peak meter, and it is an improvement overall. But I think you need to have your sound good, glued and really close before these are worthwhile. So guys, I hope that video was helpful for you. I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much for watching, liking, subscribing and all that jazz. Any questions? Throw it down below. See you then.